Kaeli Lindholm, welcome to Power Presence Position.
Oh, hi, Eleanor. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. So today you're in Orange County, California, but over the weekend you were in Miami. What's it like to be, of course, you are a well-known keynote speaker in your industry, medical aesthetics. What was it like to be speaking live again?
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so funny. I've been on Zoom and behind a screen. And I remember a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would be nervous to have to talk to an audience that I couldn't look at and get direct feedback from. And the whole dynamic has shifted now. And I went into that with the biggest nerves, like what are they going to think and what's their faces going to say, and trying to actually get responses from the audience. But it was so rewarding, just to be in a room, to feel the energy, to be around a group of people that, just human connection. Like it kind of feels like a little back to normal-ish, for whatever that means, the new normal.
It does. It really, like, things are starting to open up. People are traveling. Events are starting back up again. It's just such sweet relief. I tell you, sweet relief.
Yeah, no, it was nice to be, in front of an audience, but also challenging myself in a new and different way. Cause I think one thing with my husband and I joke all the time, like business on the top, party on the bottom. So we're
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
like
Exactly.
yeah. But yeah, just sort of like, okay, time to get back out of the comfort zone and go out and
Yeah.
be invisible. Yeah.
Yeah, very exciting. So, today you are known as the founder of a company that does business and leadership development and coaching and training for practitioners and large companies as well in the medical aesthetics field. But I want to take this back. So we're going to kind of track your path to building the company that you've built today and working with the kinds of brands that you're working with today. But I want to take it back to little Kaeli, because I always love hearing about what people's childhoods were like and how your childhood, shaped the entrepreneurial leader you became. So take us back, way back. And of course, your dad is like part Samoan,
Yeah.
and that always makes me just love you even more. I just love Pacific Islanders, all of them. So,
Yes.
but
My
anyway,
grandmother was a Samoan princess. I mean,
oh my
I
gosh,
we were like kindred souls. Yes. Like the
yes,
tattoo from the neck all the way down. Oh yeah. Big time.
oh my
Royalty. Yep.
gosh.
I know.
We have
Wow.
so much in common. We have so much
I
in
know,
common.
we really do.
Yes.
Yeah, and speaking to that, which is funny because I didn't realize how involved little Kaeli was in my life, in my in my day-to-day activity as a CEO until I met you, and realized that she was driving the bus for a little while. But yeah, I grew up in Southern California, where I still live, in the same neighborhood actually that my parents live in, which is, awesome in so many ways now that I have children.
Yeah,
A lot of
exactly.
help.
Free babysitting. Yeah.
Yeah. But I grew up. My dad. You mentioned my dad, and he's a big part of my story because he was just really like my best buddy growing up, and a big influence in terms of my mindset around hard work, and that he came from a pretty underprivileged upbringing and earned his way to a professional football career and had his own business. And, a lot of the philosophies that he taught me and my siblings were just about that kind of hustle, hard work, get up every day. And you don't have to have all the skill. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the strongest, but you, as long as you apply yourself and, try as hard as you possibly can, you're going to be able to succeed. And I remember growing up, I was the girl at soccer practice, even into my teens, when the other girls were driving themselves to practice. My dad would come and sit in a lawn chair and watch the practices. And then, most parents would be like, oh, how was practice? And maybe evaluate success by how the games went, but not my dad. My dad would say, why weren't you first in line for that drill? Or why didn't you hustle? Or why weren't you more coachable? And it was all about the process and, the application to really your craft, and so I think that there's a lot of that upbringing that has helped me and, helped me achieve success in my career. But also, a lot of the work that we've done together is like, sometimes what gets you here, got you here doesn't necessarily get you there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I've lived that too. I've lived that too. Yes. Haven't we all?
Yeah.
So that's fascinating. So you went on, one of the big things that we've talked about is the role of sports, in your sort of childhood and growing up. We've talked about soccer. Did you play in college?
Yeah, I did. I went on a full ride soccer scholarship. So that really soccer paid for my education.
That's so cool. I didn't know that about you. I didn't know that about, what position did you play?
And in college, I was a defender. I started like in offense my whole life. And then when you're kind of fast until you go to college, and then everybody else is faster than you. And then
right. You're like, oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
So now this is so interesting. I can remember years ago, maybe like 7 years ago, EY came out with a study that was taking a look at the connection between women who had played competitive team sports in particular, and their success as leaders in the corporate world. And they found that there was a high incidence of women who were senior leaders in the corporate world playing competitive sports. But you graduated from college, you go on to have a sales career, and you achieve a lot of success in corporate America as a sales executive. Take us through a little bit about those sort of that kind of first, I guess, sort of decade of your career in corporate America. What was that like?
Yeah. So it's interesting because it was actually through soccer that I went back like my fifth year. I had a fifth year of college. I was done playing soccer. So I went back to the high school that I played at, and I coached the team. And one of the dads of the players I was coaching was working with Bayer Healthcare, the big German company. He had an opening in LA for a sales position. I hadn't graduated college yet, but he said, we don't typically hire people that don't have 3 to 5 years of sales experience, but why don't you just come and try to interview? And I think he knew I was ambitious, and I would be scrappy and find a way, and so he kind of coached me through the interview with the hiring manager. And I was like, I'm a sponge. I'll be whatever you want me to be. You don't have to teach me anything.
Those innocent days.
No,
right?
Totally. Like you're like, okay, well, the naivety really helped me, because I probably would have like talked myself out of it. And so I started, just grinding it out in sales. I was in the diabetes industry, and I really did work up sort of the corporate ladder quickly. I was promoted year after year. Really a lot of it hard work. I was willing to get up, be the first one up, and Fridays I would stay until after traffic to get home. And then I also learned how to work really smart and sort of follow like the 80-20 rule and really focus on relationships. And I worked in that industry for a long time, but I was sort of becoming challenged within the healthcare space in terms of my ability to sell, because I began to sell a product that wasn't on formulary, so it wasn't covered by certain insurances here in the US, for these customers that wanted to use my product or recommend my products to their patients, and they couldn't get access to it. And so it was almost like, okay, having this challenge, this barrier to my personal growth, in terms of how much I could make. And then I got a call from someone that said, hey, we've heard about you from so-and-so. Would you be interested in coming over into the aesthetic industry? I was like, what's that? I don't know anything about aesthetics. Like, I never even heard of it. And they're like, yeah,
again, those innocent days.
No, I know. I was
before
like,
they become a bit more of a regular part of our life.
Right. Now I'm like, what? When?
Yeah.
And so they're like, yeah, we're launching a skincare product. And like you mentioned, my dad's Samoan. So you look at me, if you're watching the video here, I have very light skin because my mom, but I'm actually a skin type that pigments very easily. And so I had been challenged, especially being a soccer player and being out in the sun a lot with pigment. And so it was really interesting. I'm like, oh, check this out. But the biggest draw was that it was all cash. It was all like, you go and sell and you get paid. And like, that was it. There's no insurance. There's nothing that gets in the way. And your customers are happy because they're all getting cash. It's just like They're running businesses, right? And so that's when I went over and I sold skincare. And then, of course, being the ambitious little bee I saw these like laser sales reps making a ton of money selling capital. And so I worked my way over there and made my way into sales management. And so for, about a 6-year period in the aesthetic industry, I went from, sales rep to a sales director of one of the world's largest aesthetic medical device companies, managing a team of 15 women covering half the country, and it was wonderful. And it was very much my goal to climb the corporate ladder and be the boss and be at the top, and that was it. And then it got to a point where, climbing that mountain meant I had to make some sacrifices, meaning like I wasn't around my kids as much. I was traveling a lot. My husband's a VP of sales. So we were kind of like, oh, hey, hi,
Yes.
really.
Ships crossing in the night. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had both probably achieved everything we thought we wanted, but it wasn't really adding up for us. And that's when I decided that, look, I've gained a lot of skills, and I see a lot of opportunity to help practices and our industry with the knowledge that I had. And you know what, I'm just gonna, go ahead and start my own thing. And so it was, just my goal was like, just leave and make a couple $100,000 a year and just, be cool, like be a cool mom, and that was it.
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to learn more about how short-lived that initial goal was. But yeah, I know it didn't last long. But here's the question though, because when you think about that experience, rising through corporate ranks, especially in sales, which I think is, having a sales background is so useful, for an entrepreneur. What was it about when you think about your corporate experience and everything that you learned there? What would you say was like the one or two things that have helped you most as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, 100% is like definitely my work ethic, just being, and I'm sure we'll talk about that and like how to, I've pivoted that energy, but I mean, just focus and commitment and willingness to endure turbulence and, kind of be tenacious to accomplish my goals. And then 2 is relationships. I think that's something I had to kind of think about that, and honor that, because I felt like, it was sort of braggish of me to be like, oh, I'm a good relationship builder. But if I think about it, that's what's important to me. And so as I became an entrepreneur, it was even the relationships that I had built within, the industry that helped really open doors for me and become some tailwind, I think, in terms of getting access to the opportunities that I've had.
And it's so interesting because I think when we think about entrepreneurship, especially service-based entrepreneurship and scaling service-based businesses, a lot of times there can be this emphasis on sort of online marketing strategies, which I think is, and then you have these founders who have literally Rolodexes. Well, they're not Rolodexes anymore, but contact lists and relationships that are worth millions upon millions to the business, and they're not adequately tapping into them. And I know that has not been the case for you. Like that ability to nurture and tap into and leverage those relationships has been important.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that, I mean, I definitely fell into that a little bit because a lot of the, before I found you, I would say even, but like a lot of the entrepreneur education that's online is about how to build an online business, and not for somebody that's like, hey, developing a really strong partnership or referral partnership or just authentic relationship with someone. You feel like you have to walk into a room and like, how to network in this room, and you're like, it's like on show, like, check me out, like chin up, right hand over here, and it's like, oh, you can just like be yourself.
Yes. And develop
so,
those relationships.
Yeah. So I think that, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm like immune to that, but coming from that, where I could see that tapping into, and even reps and managers that I worked with in corporate who've like climbed the ladder now and have more decision-making power, I would say, I've just kept those relationships tight. I just really
Yeah.
think it's not about, it's about the long game. It's not about like what you're going to get from somebody right now or what can you extract this minute, but even I'm willing to like give, and then, come in and say, hey, what, ask, like kind of not just make it so much about what I can get, in the moment.
100%. That is so, there's something about that is so short term. And I don't think it builds legitimate growth opportunities, in business at all. Okay. So you come to this point where you say, you know what, I'm making this decision that I want to have more agency over my life, my schedule, my time. I'm going to start my own business. And so you did. And
Yeah.
the reality is that you were able to make it a success quite quickly. So tell us, I'd love for you to kind of walk us through that first phase. And when you look at just that sort of the like phase one of your business, tell us a little bit about how that came about and some of the key things that worked for you that you put into place that really helped you create that first level of success.
Yeah. So it was pretty organic because I did go into a consulting really role. Like I did
Yeah.
one-to-one consulting, out of within the same space, within the same industry. So I had left sort of the corporate company that I was working for. I had built out a newer model of business. So just to kind of put it in perspective, I was originally selling lasers. So then I would sell, a piece of capital equipment to the doctor, and then we'll just make one up, like laser hair removal, right? And then they would use that to remove hair on their patient.
Yeah.
Well, this whole new model came out really like Full Sculpting has, and there's a couple other companies that came out with this idea that the physician would buy the device and then there would be consumables. And so, this became a very attractive model for these companies that they were going to be making this. There's this annuity revenue model, and then they would put these practice development managers in place that would help these practices market and drive utilization of the procedure. So it's sort of this win-win, and I had been a part of launching this new model for a company. And so that was very attractive. And so other device companies were calling me to help them build this go-to-market strategy and bring in team to be able to implement this type of model. During that experience, I met a young plastic surgeon who asked me to do some work with him and offered me a share of profit to come in and help him build his business. And so I stepped in as a managing director of a practice. And I think that, at the time it was a big pay cut. It was a big risk and a big pay cut. I kind of weaned off a lot of the clients I had been consulting with to be able to go in on this. And it was also a pivotal moment for me in the business because I learned the way my customer thought in a whole different way. I was put right in their shoes, and so from there, I also realized that there were so many practices that needed help, that these doctors had not been through business school yet, because like we talked about, where I was working with Bayer and calling on physicians who were really in this insurance-based model, it was very different in aesthetics, that these doctors were trying to build multi-million-dollar empires and running retail businesses, and so they were still kind of in the old medical model, like the stethoscope, like, okay, doctor shows up now, but yet they're selling cash services, right? And so it's sort of like this dysfunctional thing going on. And so that's really when I started, and when I launched the academy and when I started thinking about how do I help more practices at scale versus just this one-to-one model. And, I ended up leaving that practice and starting this academy that I have now.
So I love this. And I just want to kind of pause for people who are listening because I think it's so genius. So you're running your business and doing consulting, and then you get this kind of contract, and it actually ends up being a marquee contract, even though it might not seem that way at the time, because you're totally in, you get upfront in-depth knowledge of what it's like to be your customer. So you first start doing it like as a contract. So you're in there actually doing the work, learning it. You weren't learning the ropes because you already knew the ropes, but you were really, I would say that to me sounds like that initial development. So taking your knowledge, arranging it in a way that was going to be easy to consume and implement, not just for this practitioner, but for others. Is that fair?
No, it's totally fair. It just gave me, and this is really the power too of like getting very niche, because when you get more focused, you kind of transition from, I know what you need. I feel like before as a consultant, I was coming in like, all right, I know what you need. Like, let's do this 1, 2, 3. Whereas on the flip side, going through that experience and launching this, sort of this group model and having to get a little more focused, I now it's about listening. Now it's about what is it that you need, and then I create that instead of creating the actual, business that I think you need. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
abstract, but you can become so much more, dive so much deeper in terms of listening and then developing, in this case, it's milestones and it's a framework for growth versus an actual, here's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps,
Yeah. Which often, and that model, which is a lot of the consulting model. And guys, we're not saying the consulting model is a bad model. We're just saying that it gets really tiring really fast.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the point of, my goal with working, when I found you, was that I was, I started my business, like you said, like, I want more autonomy. I want more flexibility. I want freedom. I don't want to work as much, but then you become not just, one piece of a business, you become the whole business. And so you don't realize that the only way for you to make more money is to just turn up the volume and work more until you learn how to scale, and that's the bottom line.
Yeah. And it's very stressful. Like I look back on pictures from, the phase when I was there. And I think I was in that phase for like, I'm going to say 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. Like, whoa. Even though I know I'm like, these pictures are totally Photoshopped. They're professional pictures. They've been Photoshopped and I still look exhausted. Like, that's bad.
Yeah, but you look at them and you can see a different what you were feeling inside, regardless of the way you looked, because I mean, when I left corporate, my hair was falling out. I had an ulcer. I was like working my butt off, and people are like, really? But and you're like, no, I hit it very well.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally. So, okay. So you create this incredible, process, that you roll out first with a client, then you say, look, there's huge potential here. So you create the academy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the academy, tell us a little bit about how you kind of launched the academy, because that's like a flagship product. It's one of there's no other real offering like it in terms of working with, leaders in the medical aesthetics industry. But I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about it, how you like that path from going from, okay, we're going to take this, so first I'm consulting,
right?
Then I'm creating this process and, still doing it one-on-one. Now I'm going to turn it into a program and curriculum that can serve multiple people at once. So take us through that process.
Right. Okay. So I actually launched it before I had it built. So
yay, smart. We love that.
Yeah. So, but I knew intellectually that at this point I wanted to find a way to take this framework that I had built to a mass, audience, at scale. And so I actually went into, here's in general what I think, what this process would look like a rough, very rough.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went into, I had already really built up a strong email list, and I had presence. I had been on, my Instagram, and I had presence in my industry, but I hadn't capitalized on that, and so I went into like a launch, and I basically launched this academy, and God bless my life at the time, because COVID hit, and all of a sudden, as I was launching this, doctors had to close their doors, and they didn't know what to do. So one, it was, how do I get help so I really learn how to pivot right now when I literally have to shut my business down? And two, you know, a lot of my surgeons, as an example, weren't operating and didn't have anything to do. And so they're like,
that's
how
right.
can I and they're high achievers. And they're like, how
Yeah.
can I optimize my time and my knowledge while things are shut down? So that really helped. I will say, I mean, you know, but yeah, so then what I did was I took the people that I had in the academy, I sold them into this dream. I knew I would find a way to deliver for them. And then I started producing content and really building this thing with them, you know, every single week, just very intimately, what do you guys need? And then just started enrolling more and more people, you know, and doing some master classes and things on specific topics and, you know, marketing, but really just kind of building that as I went along. And then I burned, like really started to burn out, because it was like, you know, doing so much work again and again and again. And that's where I really was like, I need to figure out how to get a little bit more focused. So I'm not creating so much material to like serve everybody. Even though I was in the industry, I didn't realize, like, until I went through this, like there's niche pain points that I need to figure out, you know?
Totally. Yeah. People think that a lot of times that having a niche is just about kind of focusing. It's going to be business and leadership and sales, coaching and development and training for the medical aesthetics industry. That is just where you start. You know, it's effective niching, and that ability to scale is about bringing even more focus, you know, to that. So, and that really comes down to kind of niching in place. So that I just want to kind of, again, for listeners, like highlight a couple things. One is this concept of I can remember a mentor saying, like, building the plane as you're flying it. Mm-hmm. And how those, you know, when you're launching products, that's how it's done. Like you have to, you know, otherwise you could be creating stuff that people don't need. So you launch this, it's working really effectively, but it's really tiring you out. And so at that point, you've got two things. Do I grow, as in take on more clients, but bring in a ton more overhead? Or do I scale, find a way to do this more profitably? You decided to scale, and you have, you know, like you have. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey? Yeah.
But I think it's important first for me to tell you that I was very resistant to scaling. Not because I didn't think it was important intellectually, but I, you know, like we talked about, I had really valued relationships, and also working with these folks. Even as I brought it into this group model, I was very scared that I would lose the value that I was able to bring, you know, that sort of boutique. Like I really would say, like, well, I'm not going to be like that big company that's all software based. Like I'm going to just be, you know, we're going to have this really great, like super fun, intimate relationship. And so there was sort of a resistance or a barrier where, you know, both the hard work that I had brought in was kind of starting to work against me, and the relationship piece that I valued so much was actually preventing me. In my mind, it was sort of this barrier to my openness to scaling. And I think I didn't really understand that there was a way for me to scale and protect all of those things, you know?
I 100% get that. And I think a lot of people, that's such an amazing point, because I think a lot of people struggle with that. Like for me, I experienced something similar. And for me, it was really like, I was very scared to let go of seeing the client at every stage of the process.
Yeah.
And it, you know, it was a mix of things. Partly it's like not quite having the systems in place, not quite having the trainers in place, and not quite having the team in place. But it was also, that was like, all that stuff was like 40%, but 60% was, I think, you know, when you're getting a business off the ground, you are doing some grinding and it's hard, and every customer counts, and you will pull out the stops. And that part of you, it does take a while to graduate beyond that person.
Yeah. Well, I remember us having a coaching call, and you were saying to me, you know, really, I think we really need to focus on working is getting you into the sufficiency mindset. And I was like, no, I'm pretty sufficient. Like, you know, I was like, no, we're good.
She never listens, guys. She never listens.
I know, I'm sufficient, check. Yeah. And so like, it's been this whole exploration of what that meant by living that, by like, okay, it's not about it, because it really, you're right. Like it's, we put ourselves in it's like, be honest, you're micromanaging, like, okay, be real, you're doing everything, you're saying you're not, you're hiring people, but you are managing every little aspect. And yes, it's because you don't want to take your level of customer service and experience and all of that from an A to an A minus or B or whatever. But what we do to ourselves, and this is sort of, what's been so powerful for me to learn and live through, and it's made me a better coach, quite frankly, but is that it's actually slowing down and it's preparing getting clarity and really preparing the processes and the infrastructure so that everybody, the other people that you hire and the systems that you put in place to scale are up to that level of of what you expect, and that takes like being in this, okay, I'm okay, it's going to come, we're going to be all right. I can take a minute and slow down and really think and process and plan first before I just go all out.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think the thing that gets us to start up very often is this sort of hunter mentality.
Yeah.
It's very much, and I'm sorry, you have to have it. Like I see entrepreneurs struggle so hard who can't turn on their inner hunter when the company is in startup, because you have to get you have to create the product and sell it. And until you can do that, really nothing matters. But to your point, that ability to switch from hunter to farmer, I think that's kind of the part where it's like, no, it's not just going out and killing something and dragging it back to the cave. It's actually now about like finding the seeds, planting them, tending the garden, not freaking out because the meat isn't there yet. Like, we're just giving it time. That is hard. What was the biggest challenge in that for you?
I think it's like a DNA thing. Like it's just, I have had such success by being so much in control over again, like the work ethic. And I think coming from that athlete mentality and seeing how, and again, in sales, like I was, it was success. There was one road and it was to sell more, and that was it. And so it's like, having to rewire the mindset that it's about building the team, it's about building the ecosystem, and it's about focus, and it's slow and steady, not, it's been counterintuitive, and seeing how, just getting really focused on who do I want to work with, specifically what are their pain points, and going deeper in my messaging and being able to better articulate and convey that message to that audience has given me the ability to just be way more impactful and more powerful in the approach that I have with the people that I want to work with. And by doing that, I can slow down, but also scale in a way that I'm seeing my revenues grow and my profits grow exponentially, And so once you start seeing it, then you believe it. Like,
yes. Yeah. There's that sketchy zone.
No. Yeah. No. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So fascinating. Okay. So let's then talk about, now we've kind of painted a picture of what's possible, because it is possible, and that's the thing. I think there's a lot of, conversation around entrepreneurship, which is about how painful it is, how hard it is, how much we need to grind. And there is a part of that that's true. And I do think as an entrepreneur, it's just like lifting weights. Like your joints you get used to bearing load, and it does get easier. And so things that used to feel really hard, they actually don't feel that hard anymore. At the same time, when you're in burnout, like as an entrepreneur, if you're in burnout, it's pretty bad.
Oh my gosh. Well,
right.
No, exactly. But I think that's what it's all about. It's that, being better, having more trust and faith in yourself, and knowing too, because I get frustrated when people are like, you can just make money in your sleep. You don't have to work. And I'm like, oh, okay, honey.
Yeah. You do. Yeah.
you have to work, but it's sort of like, we talk about this where, that sometimes you're going to have a little sprint. Sometimes it's just like, and you don't have to overthink like, okay, yeah, it's hard. Like I just came back from Miami. I haven't had a day. I've been working my butt off, and dinners and the whole thing and on stage but it's like, I know that I'm doing it. And then I get to like, I have unscheduled time. I have time to plan. I have time to, and so I can look forward to that and not make it catastrophic.
Yes. Yes, totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and that's the beauty, I think, of what I call a jewel business, which is a company that grows at 30% or more a year until such time as the founder wants to accelerate or decelerate, 30% profitability and 30% open time. And 30% open time doesn't mean free time, but it means that it's open for you to do activities in the business that I think are so important, like thinking, planning, creating, but it's so cool because you've totally created that in not very much time. Your business was growing anyway beforehand, but it's a different type of growth. I would love for you to share a little bit about what it's what it's like to run a business that looks like that. Like for you as a founder, for your clients, for your family, like what does it actually mean to run a jewel business?
I mean, it means everything because it's a totally different, fundamental mindset shift around what my relationship is with my business, because it's focused around my lifestyle. And what, I find with my clients so often is that we build this business. No one has to do it. We're choosing to get up every day and challenge ourselves and see what's possible and make big impact. But then we begin to resent it because it's taking so much from us, emotionally. And so the difference for me is like starting with like in traditional coaching models, you're like, yeah, Kaeli, like this is how it would be. Kaeli, what do you want your typical day to look like? Right. So we've all done that exercise and you're like, okay, wake up.
Yeah.
Coffee, yoga, lunch with my girlfriend. Yeah. And it's like, none of it includes work. It's like maybe one call
ever.
You're like, oh yeah, great. Like, that's awesome. Focus on that. And then you get on the next call and the coach is like, so what's your numbers? And you're like, wait, but
Exactly. I thought I was supposed to be having lunch. I thought I was supposed to be having lunch.
But that's the difference for me. Like having really focused on developing a jewel business is like, I can say, for example, these are the kind of clients I want to work with. This is what fuels me. I want to go have a martini lunch every once in a while with my girlfriend. I want to work in my kids' classroom. I want to do these things. And so then it's like reverse engineering the business plan to fit into that. And so it's a completely different shift around the way that you operate. And I will say, like, for me, a lot of my unscheduled time is actually not working because that's when I become really stimulated creatively. I get inspired and I'm a big, we as entrepreneurs have to create, we're creators and we have to have the energy to create content, produce a podcast and all of the things, right? Manage the team. And when you're running on such a tight schedule, it's like you don't have the space or the patience to really deal with the things that are going to come at you anyway. So if like an employee is not really doing exactly the way you want them to do, you're going to freak out instead of looking at yourself and taking more accountability. Did I really give that employee the tools that they need to, execute their job appropriately? So it's just really everything. I mean, and it's I've seen my profits grow. I mean, ridiculous. Like I'm mind blown about what we've been able to do, and really by focusing on a different way, a different kind of model of growth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's one, to me, the key is too, like when you scale and it feels better, you're more likely to want to keep doing it. Like that to me is what sustainable growth actually is, because I've totally had experiences where I've grown, but it was uncomfortable. It put me not good discomfort either, like pain and burnout. And then you just don't want to grow. You're just like, why would I want more of this? There's got to be another way.
No, exactly. It's just, it's growing in a way that feels like you feel very aligned with, because you've always said, like, you're not going to scale something you don't really truly want to scale. Like Yeah, I found that. And, as I've hired team and the business just sort of grows, if you set up the infrastructure, the business will grow organically, right? Like you
Yeah.
use the example of like,
Yeah.
our kids grow, like, or you plant a seed and it's going to grow. You just need to stop trying to turn it up all the time. Like,
Yeah.
focus on, I think like when we set initiatives or we plan new programs within our business, I mean, I was always trying to start a new business in my mind. And now it's not so much that. It's like, okay, we're going to do this and then we're going to stick with it until it works. And then we move on. And I get the fulfillment of, just having more patience with that and knowing that it's going to work and confidence that we're going to do what it's going to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting. So let's talk about, I wanted to kind of share a couple of practical things about what that looks like. So we're sort of painting the picture of, what it's like and the impact of growing this way. But when you think about like bringing focus, so I can tell our listeners are like, okay, how do you bring focus? What were sort of two things that you did in the business that you had
Yeah.
to bring even greater focus? Like, what does that look like practically?
Yeah. So, like I said, I thought I was niched already, and we've talked about niching in place. And even like you'll start to see if you look at my presence now and like through my marketing, this is stuff we were working on 9 months ago. And so it's sort of been this really subtle kind of pivot. When I started in the consulting side, I worked with a ton of male plastic surgeons, and they were the ones who would just really be willing to pay for my services. And I was telling myself, like, well, women just they aren't as comfortable spending money on themselves, or they don't, I was telling myself that they weren't going to be as likely to want to work with me. And then I started thinking, well, that's a problem. Like, if that's actually true, that's the problem that needs to be addressed. Like, why don't they feel confident enough to invest in themselves and believe that they're capable of making, good on that investment and getting the return on that investment? And I started at the same time seeing how through my own growth and, the whole model of really adapting to this whole dual business idea, how my life had changed as a mom and as a wife and a friend and, daughter and all of the things. And I was just like, there was that one piece of who I was working with, what I had become and how I felt like I wanted to help, impact other people who were like me, other women. And then there was the piece where I had plastic surgeons who were saying to me, well, we have all these nurse injectors that are taking all of our non-surgical business, and starting to see that as a threat. And so it was a combination of really my belief system, where I felt most aligned in my heart, and then where I was seeing trends in the industry. And now I'm starting to, move even deeper and working with, I'm calling next year the year of the injector, and what's happened with COVID, more women are starting their businesses, or leaving, other providers that maybe they were working for and trying to go out on their own. More people are starting businesses, more women who are skilled, want to scale and don't know how to scale. And so I've really sort of pivoted within my industry, within my niche, way, way, way deeper. And it's just been, it's been a huge impact on how I can so powerfully talk to that specific pain point of that
Yes.
audience, So
Yeah.
I think
That's amazing.
yeah.
That's amazing. And it's so cool to hear it that way, because when you think about it, it's sort of aligning, your beliefs and values with your intentions, and how you want to show up. But the cool thing is that when you have that, and people talk about that, but when it actually corresponds to a growing market, like to a trend and a growing market, that is gold.
Well, and what's amazing is like, I am finding myself where I had this like philosophy and this idea, and I was so afraid to say it. And I'm like, why do I feel so much resistance? And now I'm living in it. And it's like, I get to be the leader of that. I get to really shine as a thought leader, and I get to be someone that other people get to look toward as a guide, and I can confidently help other women, get to that place where they can express their own disruptive philosophies, And so, yeah, I see the industry. I'm like, that's fine. All y'all keep talking about the same old stuff, but
That's right.
we're on this track right now.
We'll be over here taking your business.
Over here.
Yeah. I love it. So exciting. So I would love for you, as we're kind of wrapping up, I would love for you to share, because you work with super successful entrepreneurs and leaders yourself. Like, What would be, when you think about the women who are listening to this show, fierce entrepreneurs in their own right, what's something that you want to share with them, that you've learned and implemented that has been really powerful in terms of your success?
Aw, work with Eleanor. Uh,
Ah, definitely, guys, listen, listen.
I don't know why anybody wouldn't. Honestly, I think it's just, that we all have the ability to accomplish our dream and our goal, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. I think that, so for so long I can't be a great mom and be a great businesswoman and have my own company and, all of the things. And I think that we don't have to think like that anymore. I think that we can have it all, and that just means that, maybe it's not following someone's 10-step process that's good, that worked for them, and it's creating your own process and looking at your own life and then building the infrastructure for your business to support the kind of lifestyle that you want. I think that, Eleanor is, you're just brilliant in terms of being able to put this into a model that we can all follow. But I think just empowering, anybody who's listening to say, whether they're coming from corporate or whether they, whatever their path is, there's so much opportunity, and to just stay focused and continue to, beat their own drum and not listen to the noise. Yeah.
So powerful, so powerful. Okay, so where can people who are listening go to learn more about you and the work you do? Where should we send them?
My podcast is called The Fierce Factor. And yeah.
And there's lots on there for whether, even if you're not in medical aesthetics, I think there's a ton on there that people can get about leadership, sales, business development.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Eleanor. Yeah. For my Instagram, my name, Kaeli.Lindholm. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you.
Thank you, Eleanor. This has been so much fun and a dream. And it's been great working with you as well.
All right.